Well, hi everybody. I'm joined today by Glenn, who's going to talk to us about board games, which I'm really excited about. So probably the easiest thing to do is, Glenn, if you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Glenn Ford. I'm a tabletop games designer and developer. I've worked on games such as Gaslands, A Billion Suns, and released from my own little company, Spaceship Amiga, Moonflight, and Turing. And we're currently in the middle of trying to put out Song of Tales. Yeah.
Because I know that I've played games. It's funny, my mum put round for a coffee and she's here in the background. We've played numerous games where you get to a point and it doesn't quite work, or the rules don't fully explain in this scenario. I feel like there must be such a lot of testing. Do you have a lot of beta testing of your games?
Yeah. There's always the sort of the dreaded blue screen of death for a game, and hopefully. So it's funny because one of the things that everyone always says is, however much playtesting you do for a game, on the day you release it, it will get 10,000 times more playtests than you could ever put into it. And people will find exploits and loopholes and things that are a bit sort of, oh yeah, that turned out to be a bit more powerful than I intended when you combine those things. But hopefully you can shut down all of those full breakpoints where the game just goes and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do now. This is ruining my experience.
It's interesting because I remember having a conversation with my husband when I was first thinking about using Kickstarter for my book, Milk and Cookies. And he was saying, well, but you're asking people to fund the thing. So the thing can't exist yet. You're saying on there, this is what the thing is. And I said, no, you have to basically already have the artwork and the story and say, look at it. And it's the amount of work that goes into making that Kickstarter page professional and have so much information. I mean, it took hours, and I speak to a lot of other writers online who run Kickstarter campaigns because, like with you, it's quite a thing amongst children's authors, and quite a lot to do with paying for the art, actually. The and the marketing side of things, of course, as well. But the amount of kind of professionalism that goes into that, rather than what you may suspect that Kickstarter is of, well, I have an idea, here we go, are we all excited?
Yeah, and I think it depends sort of where you go in Kickstarter, and it's funny because there are still the less populated sections of Kickstarter. Like if you go on Kickstarter, there's this little sort of flower image of sections of all the various sort of subcategories you can go into, and some of the ones that are less sort of heavily populated still have this feeling of, you can turn up with an idea and you can say, you know, this is what I would like to do, will you give me some money to make it happen? And it used to be true, like I say, in the board game section, you know, whatever it was, sort of 10-12 years ago, you know, some very famous big sort of games started off by someone turning up with a single drawing of a guy and going like, I would like to make this guy as a miniature, and then maybe I'd like to put this guy into a game. Would people please support me doing that? Kingdom Death is one of the biggest funded projects on Kickstarter, and that originally their first project was literally doing that. But that time I think is now past. It puts you in a wonderful place where you can have an independent business that is breaking even year one, which is not normal. That is not how businesses work. And when you're investing your own money into something that you're not sure is ever going to go anywhere, that's a huge relief, and that's hugely beneficial. And it just gives you that momentum and lets you go, okay, well, I could have afforded losing that money. I didn't. I'll take that risk again with the next one. And then eventually get to a point where you've actually built up stock and built up profit, where you're like, okay, now I've got money where I'm not even going into debt, you know, or putting money out of my own pocket to create the next thing. I'm actually running, you know, it's a self-sustaining beast at that point.
And hopefully working towards having an income from this.
Well, that's the dream. Well, you know, it's
no.
Well, there's that sort of that famous phrase in that, you know, it's been adopted, where it's like you know, the best way to make a small fortune as an independent games developer is to start with a large fortune.
Yeah. Tell me about Song of Tales, because I really want to get into it. It's so beautiful.
Yes. Okay. So, Song of Tales is a collaborative, competitive storytelling game. So the origin story of Song of Tales is, quite a while ago, I was at a friend's wedding, and I was sat next to somebody, and I rather sort of highfalutingly said that I was a games designer, and I mentioned that the part of the world I came from was nearby to Canterbury, and the person asked if there was a game of the Canterbury Tales. Now, there are a couple of board games of the Canterbury Tales, but they're quite sort of mechanical. They're about moving your pilgrims along a little road, and then they stop at places and they pick up story points, and they spend those story points, and who has the most story points sort of wins. They have no element of actually telling stories to each other. And so I wanted at that point to create a game that was actually about telling stories to each other in a storytelling competition. So that's, you know, a game, to my mind, you know, has to have a sort of scoring system. It has to make things understandable. It has to process the relationships between the people around the table into a way that they make sense. It's a lot of the time, a game is, if everybody likes each other and you get around a tabletop, everybody has fun, they enjoy each other's company. A game a lot of the time is a way of inserting something in between people that don't necessarily get on or don't necessarily know each other, and then through the medium of the game you can communicate with that other person. It's also, it can be a way of channeling out sort of negative aspects. It's like, you know, if you play a game with somebody, you want to destroy them, you want to crush them, you want to be ruthless and cruel to them, and then immediately after the game, you know, they're your friends and family, and, you know, people that you would never see harm come to. And the way that a game can be transformative of those relationships, I think, is the thing that I love about them.
I love, because my mum's in my eyeliner, and she just in my eyeliner, she just grinned at me as you were saying that, because no, we're not.
Well, yeah, different games have different levels of transformative power, which you'll know if you've ever played dodgeball with the school bully. So part of the idea of the game is that the characters, the narrators, split out into 4 general sections, and these happen to be color coded, and that has a little mechanical element within the game. And one of the things with from a product standpoint of making a game is that if you are coding things by color, you have to be aware of colorblind people. You don't want to have to say, you know, pick up the red cube when someone doesn't know the difference between a red cube and a green cube. And with the sort of the cards being split out into 4 different colors, there is the option to go, okay, well, I can put 4 completely different artwork styles into these 4 colors. And by sectioning those out into sort of different sort of areas of world storytelling, it was able to sort of allow me to sort of, first of all, collaborate with different artists from all over the world to create a very sort of distinctive art style for each of the sections. And it allowed me to sort of conceptually put together the different sort of parts of the storytelling. And so sort of opening it out to these different world folk tales means that the artwork could become richer, whilst also having a functional in-game purpose to make the game more accessible to people with, you know, different visual issues, and also created a sort of understandable theme for where these styles were coming from, where the...
If you came across somebody who was just starting out within a creative industry, whether it be gaming or something else, art, writing, whatever it may be, what would be your sort of top piece of advice?
I suppose if there's one piece of advice, it's to be patient. That to understand that talent and persistence aren't advantages in these fields; they're the entry requirements. that you're going to need something else on top of that. If you're extremely talented or extremely persistent, they could be advantages, but most likely you're going to have to find the something else that's going to make you sort of stand out in that way. There's an excellent essay by Alex Kennedy, who's a writer who has become a games designer, and he writes about sort of creating microfiction in games very well. And one of the things he said is, if you want to be a games writer particularly, you need to go out there and find the jobs and the opportunities that aren't attracting other people, that are interesting, unusual, because at worst, you are going to be on your deathbed thinking, well, I never became a games writer, but I had a pretty interesting life. That was fun. That was cool. That was worth doing. And if you do become a games writer, those are the things that you're going to need to refer to, that you're going to need to come back to, and you're going to need to use. So look out for just weird things that other people aren't doing. Pick up experience. If the creative endeavor doesn't come off, then at least you've led an interesting life. Figure out who you are, what you're offering, and present it with lucidity and panache, and that there's not one version of success. Success, is going to be a thing for you that might be different for somebody else, and somebody else's version of success could financially destroy you, and that's fine. And understand where you are and what you're aiming for, and be realistic about your goals and what you really do want. And if you want to launch $1 million Kickstarter, then understand that there are certain pieces of work and skills you have to acquire, and be realistic and make long-term plans, and don't think that things like Kickstarter are money hose that you just have to stand in front of, because they're absolutely not.
You do. Where is the best place for people to find you?
So manorkentgames.com is our website, and obviously that's got the various links to either mail me directly, but you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Instagram, we have a Facebook page. I'd say this is a relevant piece of advice to an independent creative, is there's a lot of free platforms in the world that you can get yourself out there. Be on as many of them as you can possibly have mental space for. We have a YouTube channel about tabletop game design, Rule of Carnage, and somebody asked us to launch a Discord channel for that, so people could chat about games design. So there's a Discord channel as well now that you can jump into and shout things at me. There's any of those. Hopefully there's certainly links to all of those on the website. There'll be links to all of those in the comments for this. But anything and everything, I try to sort of remain available. If somebody out there is a budding games designer and wants a prototype or a set of rules looked over, I'm genuinely more than happy to do that. I try to it's a community, and a rising tide floats all boats, and I'm more than happy to put in time and feedback on people's designs. We're out there in the various forums doing it anyway, so if anybody wants an eye over a rule set, please do hit me up. I'm more than happy to check it out and give some feedback.
Oh, that's so lovely. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, Glenn. It's been fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was jolly fun.